Stop blaming your slow metabolism. If you are over 60, it's not aging that's destroying it, it's the modern diet. As a doctor, I was shocked to discover that traditional meals your grandparents ate actually protect metabolism, and almost no one is talking about it. In my early years of practice, I once heard Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara describe the aging body as a long-used musical instrument. Not broken, not worn out, just slightly out of tune. And here's the part that stayed with me for decades. You don't fix an old violin by playing it louder. You fix it by tuning it correctly. Aging works the same way. Many of you tell me some version of this. Doctor, I eat less than I used to. Smaller portions, fewer treats, but my body feels slower, heavier, less responsive. That frustration is real, and it's not a failure of willpower or discipline. What almost nobody explains is this. After 60, metabolism doesn't weaken simply because of age. It weakens because the meals we eat no longer match how an older digestive system actually works. We keep changing the volume. Less food, lighter food, faster food, instead of changing the tuning. I've spent years studying why certain populations age with steadier energy, less metabolic chaos, and more physical resilience. Dan Bettner, who studied the world's blue zones, noticed something striking. Long-lived people don't constantly experiment with food. They don't chase trends. They repeat simple traditional meals, often the same ones day after day for decades. These meals weren't designed by nutrition influencers or food corporations. They evolved quietly, over generations, to support real human bodies, including aging ones. And unintentionally, they support three things modern diets often fail to protect after 60: muscle maintenance, blood sugar stability, and digestive ease. Tonight, I want you to hold on to one idea as we go forward. Your body is not failing you. It's responding logically to inputs that no longer fit. Sometimes the most effective step forward isn't innovation, it's remembering what already worked. For many people past 60, eating begins to feel like a negotiation. The portions get smaller, meals get skipped, food becomes something to manage rather than something that supports the day. What quietly changes, though, is not just how much is eaten, but the structure of eating itself. Over the years, I've watched a pattern repeat. Full meals are gradually replaced with protein bars, yogurts, shakes, crackers, or whatever feels easiest. It often comes from a good place. There's an assumption that lighter food must be kinder to an aging body. But lighter does not always mean simpler for metabolism. As we age, digestion becomes more deliberate. The stomach produces less acid. Enzymes are released more slowly. Muscles become more selective about when they respond to incoming nutrients. When food arrives in scattered fragments throughout the day, the body struggles to coordinate those signals. Blood sugar rises and falls more erratically. Muscle tissue receives mixed messages. Energy becomes unpredictable. What surprises many people is that smaller but complete meals often feel steadier than constant nibbling. When protein-cooked vegetables and slow-digesting carbohydrates arrive together, the body knows what to do with them. Hormones respond in sequence. Energy is released gradually instead of in spikes and crashes. The nervous system stays calmer. Traditional eating patterns understood this intuitively. 1 or 2 anchor meals created a rhythm. The body prepared, received, processed, and rested. That rhythm matters more with age, not less. Metabolism after 60 responds poorly to chaos, even when that chaos comes in small portions. I often think of metabolism like a home in winter. A steady fire warms the rooms evenly. Scattered sparks, no matter how frequent, never quite heat the space. Older bodies tend to respond better to steadiness than to constant stimulation. This isn't about eating more. It's about eating in a way the body can recognize. When meals are structured, warm, and complete, metabolism has something solid to work with. And for many people, that alone begins to restore a sense of balance they thought was gone for good. If simple, traditional wisdom matters to you, subscribe here. Traditional meals were never designed to excite the palate every day. They were shaped by repetition, seasons, limited ingredients, and the reality of bodies that had to keep working year after year. When you look closely at how these meals function, especially in older adults, you begin to see why they support metabolic stability in ways modern eating patterns often fail to do. One of the quiet strengths of traditional meals is restraint. They rarely overload the digestive system. Instead of isolating nutrients or emphasizing extremes, they combine foods in a way that slows digestion naturally. Protein arrives alongside fiber. Fats are present, but not excessive. Carbohydrates are rarely refined to the point of being instantly absorbed. This balance matters more after 60, when the body becomes less efficient at correcting rapid changes in blood sugar and hormone levels. In long-living regions, meals tend to follow predictable rhythms. Mediterranean stews built on beans, vegetables, olive oil, and small portions of fish or meat are a clear example. These dishes are cooked slowly, eaten warm, and repeated often. Japanese meals centered around miso, rice, cooked vegetables, and modest protein appear daily rather than occasionally. Bean and grain combinations in Latin cultures have sustained generations without the metabolic volatility seen in modern dietary patterns. These meals didn't require constant adjustment from the body. They worked with digestion instead of challenging it. What often goes unnoticed is how these combinations protect energy levels. Fiber slows the release of glucose into the bloodstream, preventing sharp rises that demand aggressive insulin responses. Fats extend fullness and reduce the urge to keep eating between meals. Protein supports muscle signaling without overwhelming digestion. Together, they create a calm metabolic environment, one that allows the body to allocate energy to movement, repair, and mental clarity instead of damage control. Another overlooked detail is temperature and texture. Traditional meals are frequently warm and soft enough to digest easily, especially for older adults with reduced stomach acid and enzyme output. This reduces the sense of heaviness or fatigue after eating, which many people mistakenly accept as normal aging. When digestion proceeds smoothly, energy is preserved rather than drained. Over decades of clinical observation, I've noticed that people relying on these kinds of meals often describe a steadier kind of strength. Not bursts of energy, but consistency. Fewer crashes, less afternoon exhaustion, a greater sense that the body is cooperating rather than resisting. Interestingly, many of these individuals consume fewer supplements, not because they reject them, but because their meals already provide what the body recognizes and uses. Traditional meals also remove a psychological burden. When food choices are simple and familiar, stress around eating decreases. That matters. Stress hormones interfere with digestion and blood sugar control, especially in older adults. Familiar meals reduce decision fatigue and support a calmer nervous system, which indirectly benefits metabolism. These meals do not promise transformation. They offer something more realistic and more valuable: stability. They respect the limits of an aging digestive system while quietly supporting its strengths. In a world that constantly pushes novelty and restriction, traditional meals stand as a reminder that nourishment does not need to be dramatic to be effective. With age, many physical signals become quieter. Discomfort that would once have prompted immediate attention is often tolerated instead. After meals, feelings of bloating, heaviness, or fatigue are frequently brushed aside as just part of getting older. But these sensations are not random, and they are not meaningless. They reflect how digestion changes over time. As the body ages, the stomach produces less acid, and digestive enzymes are released more slowly and in smaller amounts. This doesn't stop digestion, but it does make it less flexible. Foods that once passed through easily now require more effort. Raw vegetables, cold foods, and heavily processed items often linger longer in the stomach and intestines, drawing energy away from muscles and the brain. Traditional cultures recognized this long before modern physiology could explain it. Across Asia, Europe, and parts of the Middle East, elders were routinely served soups, stews, porridges, and simmered vegetables. These foods were not chosen for comfort alone. They were easier to break down, gentler on the stomach, and more likely to deliver nutrients without resistance. Warmth relaxes the digestive tract, improves blood flow to the gut, and supports more efficient absorption. When food arrives warm and partially broken down through cooking, the body doesn't have to work as hard. That reduction in effort matters after 60. Energy that would have been diverted to managing digestion becomes available for movement, balance, and mental focus. This is one reason warm meals are often followed by a sense of calm rather than fatigue. Cold meals, on the other hand, can slow digestive activity. The body must first raise the temperature of the food before processing can begin. For younger systems, this is a minor inconvenience. For older ones, it can tip digestion into inefficiency. The result is often gas, discomfort, or a lingering heaviness that dulls the rest of the day. Texture plays a role as well. Cooked foods tend to be softer, which reduces mechanical strain on digestion. Fibers that are difficult to break down when raw become more accessible once cooked. Nutrients become easier to extract. This is not about avoiding fresh foods entirely, but about understanding how preparation changes the body's response. There is also a subtle emotional component. Warm meals carry a sense of familiarity and safety. That matters more than most people realize. The nervous system influences digestion directly. When the body feels settled, digestion improves. When it feels strained or rushed, digestion suffers. Warm, cooked meals support that sense of ease. For older adults, this isn't a step backward. It's an adaptation. Just as vision may require brighter light and hearing may benefit from quieter rooms, digestion often responds better to warmth and gentleness. Traditional diets understood this instinctively. They didn't fight the aging body. They worked alongside it, preserving energy and comfort in the process. One of the most misunderstood changes after 60 is the quiet acceleration of muscle loss. It doesn't announce itself dramatically. It shows up as slower movements, quicker fatigue, reduced stability, and a sense that the body no longer responds the way it once did. Many people assume this is inevitable, but much of it is shaped by how and when nourishment arrives. Muscle tissue in later life becomes more selective. It doesn't respond as easily to scattered calories or isolated nutrients. It listens for clear signals. Traditional eating patterns, often without intention or scientific language, delivered those signals more reliably than many modern approaches. Historically, meals were structured. They tended to include a meaningful protein source early in the day or at a consistent time. Fish, eggs, legumes, or slow-cooked meats were not eaten alone. They arrived with vegetables, broths, and mineral-rich components that supported how muscles receive and use amino acids. This combination matters. Protein without supportive nutrients is like a message sent through static. The body hears it, but not clearly. Minerals such as magnesium, potassium, and zinc play a quiet but essential role in muscle signaling. Traditional meals provided these through whole foods rather than isolated supplements. Leafy greens cooked into dishes, legumes simmered for hours, bones used for broths, and grains prepared in traditional ways all contributed to an environment where muscle tissue could respond appropriately. What I've observed over many years is that older adults who rely on structured, familiar meals often describe a different kind of strength. Not explosive power, but reliability. They feel more capable of getting through the day without sudden exhaustion. Their energy doesn't disappear unpredictably. This steadiness is often absent in those who rely heavily on shakes, bars, or nutrient powders, even when calorie intake appears similar. There is also a timing element that traditional patterns respected. Meals had a beginning and an end. The body could enter a state of reception, then transition into repair. Constant grazing interrupts that process. Muscles require periods of clear nutrient delivery, followed by rest to rebuild and maintain themselves. Traditional meals created those cycles naturally. Another overlooked aspect is chewing and digestion. Slow-cooked foods require less effort to break down, allowing amino acids to reach muscles with less metabolic cost. When digestion is smoother, more energy remains available for maintaining posture, balance, and movement. Over time, that difference becomes noticeable. Emotionally, structured meals provide reassurance. When eating feels predictable, stress hormones decrease. This matters because cortisol interferes directly with muscle maintenance. Traditional meals, eaten in familiar ways, support not just physical nourishment, but hormonal balance as well. I often think of muscle as a listener rather than a laborer. It responds best when the message is clear, calm, and complete. Traditional eating patterns spoke that language fluently. They didn't overwhelm the body or demand constant adaptation. They provided steady signals day after day, allowing strength and energy to be preserved quietly, without drama. When I think back to Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara's philosophy, what stands out most is his refusal to frame aging as a battle. He believed the body was not something to overpower or discipline into submission, but something to understand. Aging well, in his view, depended on adjusting inputs as physiology changed. Food was one of those inputs. Traditional meals fit this idea naturally, because they evolved alongside aging bodies, not in opposition to them. After 60, metabolism tends to respond poorly to constant restriction, novelty, and stimulation. What it recognizes instead is simplicity, warmth, and regularity. Meals that arrive in predictable forms, with familiar ingredients and gentle preparation, reduce the metabolic noise that exhausts older systems. This is not about eating perfectly. It is about eating in ways the body can interpret without strain. Dan Buettner's observations from longevity regions reinforce this pattern. Long-lived populations do not rotate endlessly through new dietary theories. They repeat meals that support daily function. The same soups, the same grains, the same legumes, prepared in similar ways year after year. Longevity in these regions is not built on excitement, but on reliability. What becomes clear over time is that traditional meals quietly support several systems at once. Digestion becomes smoother because food is cooked and balanced. Blood sugar remains steadier because fiber, fat, and protein arrive together. Muscle receives clearer signals because nutrients are delivered in usable forms, accompanied by the minerals and rhythms that support repair and maintenance. Many modern eating patterns fail not because they lack science, but because they ignore context. Aging changes how the body processes food, how quickly it recovers, and how much stress it can tolerate. Traditional meals respected those limits instinctively. They worked with physiology rather than pushing against it. There is also a psychological steadiness that comes from familiar meals. Decision fatigue decreases, anxiety around food softens, the nervous system settles. That calm matters more than most people realize, because stress directly interferes with digestion, blood sugar control, and muscle preservation. Familiar food is not just nourishment, it is reassurance. The most important takeaway is a gentle one. Declining energy, slower metabolism, and digestive discomfort are often interpreted as personal failure or unavoidable decline. In reality, many of these changes reflect a mismatch between modern eating patterns and older physiology. When the match improves, the body often responds with more cooperation than expected. Sometimes progress does not require adding something new. It comes from returning to what sustained people quietly and reliably for generations. Traditional meals are not outdated. They are age-appropriate, respectful of the body's changing needs, and grounded in lived human experience. In many cases, they offer exactly the kind of support an older metabolism has been asking for all along.